Hello, from my home office. My name is Heather Levy and I was supposed to read this year at the 2020 Scissortail Creative Writing Festival, which unfortunately had to be canceled due to coronavirus. We're very thankful for the organizers of the festival, which is just a wonderful gathering of creative people and readers alike. And we're very thankful that we're able to still share our work in this forum. I can't guarantee that I have pants on. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, maybe you do. Who knows? That's the great thing about being able to share this way. I'm definitely not going to move from this chair just in case. You don't want to see things, right? So today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a short story that is a part of an anthology published by Muslin Press. It's Behold the Undead of Dracula, Lurid Tales of Cinematic Gothic Horror. I have several friends in here, including Burr Winery, who's also an Oklahoma native who lives in Sapulpa. He has some amazing work. You should definitely check it out, along with everyone else who's in this great anthology. It's a wonderful way to escape everything that's going on right now. And yeah. And you might even recognize some inspiration from some of the stories that are in here, including my own, which I'm going to, again, be reading an excerpt from. This short piece is kind of feminist driven, and it's called You Should Smile More, The Blood Coven of Arcana. I don't normally write horror, but I have written horror. I normally write pretty dark crime fiction, but this was a great departure and a lot of fun for me. So I'll go on. You should smile more. The first time I met Joan Crenshaw, I expected her to be tall. The way Carrie talked about her, I pictured an Amazonian woman, all corded muscle and broad shoulders. If anything, Joan was one of the smallest women I'd ever known. Her long, flowing aqua blue dress made her look like a child playing dress-up. Her hair, a color I could only describe as dried blood, was twisted into a tight bun on top of her small head, but I could tell that it was thick and long. Her face, neither young nor lined with age, reminded me of the cold and creamy buttermilk my mother used to drink every morning. That first meeting Carrie talked me into attending at the local library, Joan didn't push me to talk, which was a good thing, since I had no idea what to say. Instead, Joan asked the other women circled around the cramped conference room to speak. Many of their stories reflected my own, women dissatisfied with their small town life, the lack of opportunities, unless you had a cock. They spoke about kids dangling off each arm while the men gathered at the only watering hole in Arcana to drink away their responsibilities. Ben rarely drank with his friends, and Charlie, our one child, had just turned 3 and only occasionally used me as a jungle gym now. But the lack of opportunities part got to me. I had lived in Arcana all my life, but that didn't mean I'd given up on leaving it. Ben, a city native, moved to Arcana for his work as a gas pipeline inspector for one of the big oil companies. He had fallen in love with Arcana first, me second. Ben loved the decorated town center during the holidays, the quaintness of knowing your neighbors, and being able to ask for a cup of sugar without getting shot, his words. He loved me because I was a fixture of the place, a good, solid woman brought up on fresh milk and the Word of God. I loved that he wasn't like every other football-loving, beer-guzzling man in town. Until he was. Isn't that right, Anne? I looked up to see Joan's gray eyes calmly examining me, as if I were an ant under a magnifying glass, like she was waiting for me to squirm in pain and burst into flames. Carrie, sitting in the chair next to me, nudged my arm. I'm sorry, I said, almost too shocked to get words out. You put your stock in a man, and he gave you nothing in return, Joan said, her voice even as an iced-over lake. A part deep in the corner of me stirred awake at hearing that slithering voice, so unlike the heavy twang I'd heard my entire life. you thought he would take you away from all this instead of you taking control of your life. You could make your own choices, but you let him decide your fate. You are no different from most in this room. You are lazy. It was like she had somehow tapped into my brainwaves and heard my thoughts. I wanted to be angry, to deny everything she was saying in front of this group of women. Who the hell was she to simplify my marriage, my life like that? I loved Ben. I loved being a mother to our child. I had a good job as an administrative assistant to the goddamn mayor of Arcana. Who was this woman, the stranger to our town? Fuck her. Joan smiled and my body went cold. You should be angry, Anne. You should all be angry. Joan moved to the center of the circle, the swish-swish of her blue dress disturbing the sudden silence in the room. You have all allowed this town and its men to swallow you whole. Now it is time to claw your way out of the beast's belly, cut off its balls, and take back your power. Many of the women, including Carrie, giggled at this. I didn't. Joan looked at me again, and it was like the room's edges dimmed to black, so I could only see her face. Her lips remained a straight, thin line, but her words filled my mind in uneven bursts, not unlike a radio transmission going in and out. Anne, you are a light. You are a sister. We are the sisters of the sun and moon and blood. Rise with us. Rise with us. I closed my eyes and screamed silently until I no longer heard Joan's words. When I opened my eyes again, Joan looked disappointed. I grabbed my purse and ran from the room. Anne, slow down, Carrie said from behind me. I didn't stop. I wanted to get to my car and get the hell away from the library, from Joan, as fast as I could. Look, I'm sorry, Carrie said as I opened my car door. I thought with everything going on with you and Ben, I thought this would be good for you. Be around other women. Get some perspective. Perspective? I looked down at my friend's tanned feet, watched as a large black beetle crawled over her sandals, dipping in and over her red-painted toes. Then I watched her face as I asked, Did you tell Joan about me? About my marriage? Confusion crossed Carrie's face. What? No, of course not. My best friend seemed genuinely surprised at my question. Carrie squeezed my upper arm. I know Joan could come across as a bit hippy-dippy and intense. I don't give a shit that she dresses like a sad art teacher, I said, getting into my car. Something's not right about her. I don't know how to describe it. She's just right about everything, and it's annoying as hell. I tried to stare down Carrie, but her warm smile melted my resolve to be upset. Yeah, I grinned. Damn it. We both laughed, then Carrie suggested I come back to the following week's meeting. I thought of Ben and his work's Christmas party in the city last December. The corporate event he had suggested I wouldn't want to attend, even though I knew it was for spouses too. I got my nails and hair done and wore the red slinky dress he loved. And then I saw her face. When we arrived at the fancy downtown hotel ballroom, Ben had introduced her as a liaison between the main office and the field office workers like himself. When I shook her hand, the woman's face was so tight, her smile so fixed, I half expected her head to shatter into 1,000 shards aimed at shredding my body to pieces. That was almost 6 months ago, right around the time when Ben began working later hours. I smiled at Carrie again. Okay, I'll be there. For as long as anyone can remember, the Stitchcomb family has run the town of Arcana. Every cent my family made on our farm went to pay on the endless loans through the Stitchcombs, and it was Bernard Stitchcomb, the eldest son and heir of the family's many establishments in town, who shut down my family's means of survival for 5 generations. If they weren't already dead from grief and years of exhaustion, my parents would have died knowing their only daughter worked for the very man who ended their livelihood. My brother hadn't spoken to me in 7 years since I took the position of Mayor Bernard Stitchcomb's goddamn horror secretary, my brother's words. I wondered if my brother would be proud of me now that I had agreed to Joan's plan. Let me be clear, it was an easy decision. I spent many weeks, many nights wide awake in bed thinking of it, weighing the options. The meetings at the library were ramping up. More and more women came to the gatherings, their anger and frustration feeding my anger and frustration until it felt like a drug I couldn't escape. I needed the meetings. We all needed the meetings, needed Joan's words, her energy wrapped around us all like a mother bird protecting her hatchlings during a storm. We must strike the heart for the body to die. This is what Joan said to us, our eager ears soaking up every word. We must make use of our position to gain theirs. Of course, it made sense. Like in some classic horror film, kill the master vampire, impale his heart, and the damned will be free. Bernard Stitchcombe and his clan, the Wilsons, the Chandlers and Mayfields, the patriarchs of those interrelated families who ran Arcana, had to be knocked down from their high perches. Lobelia and Flea. Joan knew everything about herbs like lobelia, much more than my grandmother ever did. I still remember how the townsfolk used to call my grandmother a witch and turn their heads the other way when kids set fires dangerously close to her small row house. They called any woman with medical knowledge a witch back then, so I can only imagine what they would have called Joan. Joan said Native Americans used to smoke lobelia to ease asthma symptoms, but we would use the pretty purple flowers to induce vomiting and diarrhea in the male leaders in town. It will buy us time, she said. Time for what? We weren't sure, but Joan said she would tell us soon enough. Adding the lobelia lace tincture to Mayor Stitchcombe's coffee wasn't difficult. He took his morning brew with so much cream and sugar, it could hardly be coffee anymore. I was in the middle of finishing a thank you letter to one of the mayor's big donors when Sid Mayor stepped into the office. It didn't matter if he came in when the sun came up, mid-morning, or early afternoon. I had better be there at 7:30 sharp. He sounded winded from the short walk from his car to the City Hall building at Arcana Center. His sweaty red face grew redder as he struggled out of his suit jacket, his paunch stretching his pressed white button-up. On the way to his office, he glanced over at me, his eyes lingering on my legs. Anne, how many times do I have to tell you this office is professional dress only? He said, his eyes never moving up to meet mine. I was wearing my nicest black dress slacks and a blush-colored blouse, my blonde hair pulled back into a neat chignon. I was the epitome of professional dress, but I plastered on a smile. Sir? Ladies are not permitted to wear pants in this office. You know this. I did, in fact, know this, but I found myself breaking little rules here and there as of late. Mayor Stitchcombe had also had a rule of no vibrant clothing or makeup, and I had worn a fuchsia blouse the week prior and ruby lipstick the other day. The mayor stepped closer to my desk, his watery eyes glued to my chest. Were you in a rush getting dressed? You're not usually this sloppy. He motioned to my blouse. I looked down at my barely visible cleavage and slowly buttoned my blouse to the top button, my hands shaking as I did it. I swallowed the scream growing in the back of my throat. I tried, but I couldn't conjure my smile back. That's better, he said, tapping his fat fingers on my desk. I need those proposals in the mail today. No slacking off. Yes, sir. He briefly studied my expression and frowned. You know, you should smile more. You're the face of this office, and no one wants to see a sourpuss. It might have been those words that caused me to add half of the lobelia tincture to Mayor Stitchcombe's coffee that morning. Joan said a few drops would make a person sick for a couple of days. I didn't know what half the bottle would do, but I hoped it would make him sick for the rest of the week. About 2 hours after I served his coffee, he came out of his office with his face dripping sweat and his tie loose around his neck, the top buttons of his shirt open. Without a word, he ran to the bathroom down the hall from me and was there for an hour, the painful sounds of his bowels spastically releasing, making me feel sorry for the cleaning staff. He stumbled out of the bathroom, a revolting stench following him as he made his way to my desk. His extreme pallor caused me to pause typing out the last proposal for him to sign. Are you okay, sir? The jowls of his face seemed to hang lower. I'm taking the rest of the day off. Reschedule my afternoon meeting. What about the proposals? Sign them for me, he nearly yelled before rushing out the door. Maybe you should smile more, I whispered, grinning before I resumed my work. I closed the office early to take Charlie for ice cream. My sweet boy's face lit up when I got him from daycare, and the familiar guilt of leaving him in someone else's care all day coiled like a dead rattler, leaking poison in my gut. I wondered if Ben ever felt a similar guilt when he went to work each day. I doubted it. I pictured Ben's attractive co-worker, the woman whose stare almost shredded my face to pieces in December, and the peanut butter cup ice cream turned sour in my mouth. When Charlie and I made it back to the house, my mood shifted. Spending time with Charlie was the best antidote to the poisonous thoughts I had had of Ben's coworker, and we both floated into the living room to find Ben sitting on the couch, his face drawn and pale. I froze. "What's the matter?" I said, afraid of his answer. Was this it? Was this when he finally told me he was leaving me for that woman? Ben ran his hands through his dark hair and rubbed his face. "The mayor's dead, Anne." My heart thundered in my ears. My head was floating away from my body, so I sat on the couch to feel something solid beneath me. I didn't know where Charlie ran off to, but he wasn't in the room with us. What? How? They don't know yet, Ben said. They think a heart attack. He looked me in the eyes. Where were you? At the office, of course. I called there, no one answered. My throat was tight and dry, as if the ice cream I just ate never existed. I closed early since the mayor left. He wasn't feeling well. I didn't think it'd kill him. Didn't I? Ben moved closer to me, then wrapped his arm around my shoulders. I tried not to shrug him off. You must be in shock, he said. And his wife. Oh man, I can't imagine how she's feeling right now. His wife. His loyal wife of 30 years. Their 4 kids. Their 6 grandkids. Ben hugged me closer to him. I know this is hard for you, honey. Yeah, I said, and finally stopped trying to keep my head tethered to my neck. I let it go, and I felt nothing. That's where I'm gonna leave you. I do want to go ahead and read my author's note though, so you can kind of get a feel of why I wrote this particular piece, and hopefully you will pick up this book so that way you can check out the rest of my story along with everyone else's stories. So this is my note. Again, this was an anthology where we were supposed to take inspiration from those kind of 70s gothic horror revival films, in particular Hammer films. So this is my author's note. When the idea for this story started brewing in my mind, I thought, what would happen if 1970s The Vampire Lovers had a love child with 1973's The Wicker Man? The idea of the occult mixed with female sexuality and empowerment is nothing new, of course, but I wanted to see the story go beyond the creepy folk fest and gore. I wanted to tap into the current unrest many women feel and what it means to be a feminist in today's society. I love the idea of small-town women dealing with many of the common struggles all women face and trying to do something about it. So often, city-dwelling women like myself fall under the misconception that rural area women are these Stepford Wives types with no desire for societal change. It's simply not true. Sexism, harassment, sexual assault, it's found in every corner of the world, and every corner of the world contains women making changes, however big or small, to better fellow women. Then I wondered, how far is too far when it comes to feminism and making change happen in society? This is one of the central questions of the story, and I didn't want the answer to be clean-cut and without great consequences. Are there women who believe the world would be better off without men? Sure. But I'd venture to say most women are like this story's protagonist, a woman who loves her family and is doing her best with what tools she has in life. That is, until a better tool comes along. Here enters another central theme to the story. Can real change happen for women if not all women are on the same page? We all know sweeping changes in society come like a tsunami. There will be many deaths if people cannot outrun it, and those who do outrun it will be forever changed regardless of what they believe in. I rolled those themes into a big ball of bloody, sexy goodness and tried my damnedest to do justice to perhaps the greatest era of cinematic horror. So take off your clothes, smear some sacrificial blood on your face, honor the mother of all, and I hope that you do enjoy this reading, and that, again, you do pick up not only this book, but other works from other writers who are in this anthology, and also, of course, support all the wonderful writers who were to be a part of the Scissortail Festival. And thank you for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, and hope to see you next year. Bye. Thanks.